If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So remember, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's time, guys. So, a note on this episode. I will be reading from police notes and written statements. Sometimes I will add information to the notes. Usually the statements are well thought out, but police notes are from scattered memories. Sometimes it will sound like I'm repeating myself, which is good. It actually means neighbors are remembering similar events. Also, when I refer to the ex-husband, I'm referring to Jennifer's second husband, Mackenzie's father. The first husband may have been common law because I can find no record of their marriage or divorce. The first husband is the father of Kimberly and Amanda Finn. At the time of the murder, Kimberly is living at 103 Cumberland Road with her mom. Amanda is living in New Braunfels, Texas with her dad. And Mackenzie was spending a court-ordered 30 days with her father, the ex-husband, in Red Oak. Information gathered from Waxahachie Police open records on the murder of Jennifer Kinder Smiles. The murder of Jennifer occurred on June 17, 2009 at 103 Cumberland Road in Waxahachie, Texas. Most likely between the hours of 1:20 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. In this podcast, we will focus on interviews and statements of neighbors. 100 Cumberland Road. At this address, there was a husband and wife with kids. On the day of the murder, the husband went to work, came home, and the family heard or saw nothing. 101 Cumberland Road. This was the vacant house next door to the victim. It was noted by Detective Woodruff that the backyard was unfenced. 102 Cumberland Road. This address does not exist and or may be a part of 104 Cumberland Road. 103 Cumberland Road. This is the victim's house. It is assumed that Jennifer was at home alone the night of the murder until the killer came and took her life with a firearm. The murder most likely occurred between 1:20 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. on Wednesday, June 17, 2009. Around 3:45 a.m., Jennifer's oldest daughter, Kimberly, found her mother deceased. Kimberly had just come back from a friend's house where they watched a movie. Kimberly noticed things were out of order at the house. This would lead her to the main bedroom, finding Jennifer unresponsive and bleeding. Immediately calling 911, Kimberly was instructed and directed to perform CPR until paramedics arrived. The paramedics took over and could not get a pulse. An EKG was taken and it was determined nothing could be done for Jennifer. Ellis County Justice of the Peace, Precinct 4, Linda Sibley, pronounced Jennifer Kinder Smiles dead at the scene at 7:15 a.m. on Wednesday, June 17, 2009. The front of the house has the main door and a porch with windows along the back of the porch. A chair was near the door where I assume Jennifer would smoke and talk on the phone. A full-grown tree next to the house was to the left of the front door. The tree was not very tall, but provided some coverage from the sun, and has since been cut down and just a stump remains. This house had no garage. A small red car was observed parked on the street at the curb. This is believed to be Kimberly's car. Jennifer's maroon Toyota Camry was still parked in the driveway from when she came home from work. The driveway is in front of the main bedroom window, which is the master bedroom and Jennifer's room. The backyard is fenced in with a chain link fence with 2 gates on both sides of the house. The back of the house has 1 door. "104 Cumberland Road. Police interviewed a man who did not mention he saw or heard anything the night of the murder. He did mention that he saw a man fitting the description of the ex-husband more recently and lately at 103 Cumberland Road. 105 Cumberland Road. This house is next door to Jennifer. The police interviewed a resident who remembered seeing Jennifer Monday, June 15, 2009, somewhere between 7:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. On Tuesday, in the late evening before the murder, this person could not sleep well. They didn't fall asleep until 1:15 a.m., Wednesday, June 17, 2009. Later that night, this person dreamt that somebody knocked on their door around 4:30 a.m. I theorized that may have been the police wanting to talk to them. 106 Cumberland Road. The family lived directly across the street from the victim's house and had a child of similar age as Mackenzie, Jennifer's youngest daughter. The wife at this address became friends with Jennifer and would help her by watching Mackenzie when she worked late or when she needed somebody to take Mackenzie to school. The wife said Jennifer actually kept her personal issues to herself and thought of Jennifer as a decent person. The family said that when Jennifer first moved into the house, she was selling real estate and did a lot of work from home. This enabled Jennifer to walk Mackenzie to school and spend more time with her. During this time, a man named Jim was coming over to Jennifer's house. The neighbors were told Jennifer and Jim were good friends who became business partners. They actually owned a real estate business together called Jim and Jen's Real Estate. Jim and Jen began dating each other, where Jim would stay over on the weekends. Unfortunately, the housing bubble was bursting by the end of 2008. This is when Jennifer had to change jobs. The neighbor said this is when they were watching Mackenzie more often. Also, Jennifer enrolled Mackenzie in the YMCA after-school program because many times Jennifer would not get home until 7:30 p.m. Neighbors said around January 2009 they stopped seeing Jen coming around and Jennifer's ex-husband started coming around more. One day, when the neighbor was taking Mackenzie to school, Mackenzie said something to the effect of, "Mom wishes Jim would just leave her alone," which infers that Jennifer and Jim broke up and Jim did not take the breakup well. Also, Jennifer's family had told the police that the ex-husband coming around more frequently may have upset Jim. Family and friends were told by Jennifer that they believed Jim had driven by her house to see if the ex was there. Jennifer told the family that Jim had become clingy and demanding of her time. With Jim out of the picture, the ex-husband appeared to step back into Jennifer's romantic life. The wife at this residence said that one day the ex was over and Jennifer introduced him to her husband, and the ex just nodded his head and said nothing. They said the ex was standoffish. According to the family, the wife said the ex started staying over 2 to 3 times a week and helped Jennifer with moving out her old furniture and moving in new furniture. The neighbor noticed before Kim graduated, Jennifer had work done on the house and a white van was there around May 2009. Also, on Mother's Day, Sunday, May 10th, 2009, the neighbor said they saw the ex-husband Jennifer and Mackenzie coming back from town and maybe from church. The neighbor noticed Jennifer had a flower in her hands. After this, the neighbor said the ex stopped staying the night regularly and was not coming over as much. They noticed the ex vehicle was parked in the front of 103 Cumberland Road at 10:30 p.m. Sunday, June 14, 2009, and was still there when one of the family left for work at 8:30 a.m. on Monday, June 15, 2009. They said the ex drove a newer black Dodge pickup, and he was also known to drive a silver Volvo. Because Jennifer's property didn't have a place to store a push mower, the family allowed Jennifer to store her mower in their shed. The wife said Jennifer retrieved her mower on Monday, June 15, 2009, but never brought it back to their shed. Jennifer normally must have brought it back the same day, because it was noted by the neighbor that this was unusual. A tenant also lived at 106 Cumberland and usually goes to bed at 4:30 p.m. The tenant claimed to be diagnosed with an illness. This person talked to Jennifer 2 days prior, I assume Monday, June 15, 2009, which may have been when Jennifer came to get the mower. Though I thought Jennifer would have been at work, the tenant said Jennifer was on the phone Tuesday at 11 a.m., June 16, 2009, and she was acting nervous. The husband of the residents said that he saw Jennifer around 7 p.m. Monday, but heard nothing the night of the murder. Also, they heard a loud scream the Monday before the murder at 10 or 11 p.m. and looked out their window and saw Kimberly on the hood of a car. Kimberly and her friends were hanging out and talking. A car was revving its engine also that night. It was not unusual for Kimberly and her friends to hang out and make a little noise, seeing she was out of school and it was summer. On the Tuesday evening before the murder at approximately 6:30 p.m., the wife said she saw Jennifer on her front porch smoking a cigarette. She could see Jennifer was talking on her cordless house phone. This was apparently a common occurrence. Jennifer was also known by the family and friends to talk on the phone and smoke on the back porch. The family said around 10:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Tuesday, June 16th, 2009, their inside dog started going nuts and trying to get out of the house. They heard a female voice yelling, but they did not look out the window. They assumed it was Kimberly and her friends. These neighbors did not know that Kimberly was working at IHOP until midnight, so it couldn't have been Kimberly. The family had fans going the night of the murder and apparently drowned out anything outside. According to newspapers.com, the day's high was 90, but the late evening and early morning would have been in the 70s, so that makes sense. Anybody who sleeps by a fan knows how it can drown out other noises. (107) Cumberland Road. Husband and wife lived there. They noted there had been an increase in solicitors in the neighborhood. The wife remembers 2 years prior when Jennifer moved into 103 Cumberland that Jennifer had told them she recently divorced. When talking to Jennifer, they felt like her previous marriage had been abusive. The husband and wife did not specify the type of abuse. They remembered Jennifer working in her yard, riding bikes, and walking with Mackenzie, or watching Mackenzie play. The wife said she did not talk to Jennifer much, but noted Jennifer was nice, quiet, and a family-oriented person. It was mentioned that Kimberly had a female friend who stayed over quite a bit. The friend may have gone to school or been out of school. Kimberly also had a boyfriend or guy friend who seemed to be older than high school. He came and went all hours of the day. He was known to rev his engine and pill out even at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. He lived down the street and drove a primered 70s type muscle car. He was of average height and build and a white male. To make a note, Kimberly was 18 at the time of her mom's death and had just graduated high school, where she was working at IHOP until she would eventually leave for college. The wife also said Jennifer had a male friend come over who drove a white car. The friend, who we have come to find out was Jim, would stay the night, but the wife hadn't seen him since approximately February '09. The ex-husband was seen coming over more regularly, and they noticed him coming over around April or May. Last they saw him was a week or two after Memorial Day, and Memorial Day was May 25th, 2009. They described him as a big guy, tall, muscular, and black. He was driving a black pickup truck that was a pretty new model. They said Jennifer's family was mainly quiet and kept to themselves. The only trouble they remembered was shortly after Jennifer moved into her house. The middle daughter, Amanda, ran off with her boyfriend, and Jennifer was very worried. Jennifer's parents came into town to wait for the girl to return. Amanda was caught by authorities in Arizona. Her boyfriend had family there. Amanda would eventually move in with her dad in New Braunfels, Texas. They also noted the week before Jennifer's murder, someone had broken the windshield of her daughter's car, that was Kimberly's car, which was parked in front of the house. The residents of 107 Cumberland said that overall Jennifer's house was not the type to have wild parties or cause trouble. They told police Jennifer even let all the neighbors know when she hosted a pre-prom party. They said Jennifer also helped an older neighbor at 105 Cumberland named Mr. Jean. Mr. Jean would eventually be put into a nursing home. 108 Cumberland. A man rented the house and was never interviewed. Waxahachie PD would try to interview him later in August 2010, where it turns out he had moved the next street over to 200 Wilmington Avenue. Neighbors on Cumberland said this man made them uncomfortable, and I never found an interview with him. 109 Cumberland. Have not found an interview with this residence. 110 Cumberland. 2 bachelors lived at this residence. They said they met Jennifer when she first moved into the neighborhood. Jennifer would borrow items from them from time to time. They said Jennifer told them her ex-husband was abusive and controlling. Jennifer asked them what they thought of her new boyfriend named Jim. One of the men told her she shouldn't be intimate with her business partner. They said Jim drove a white Buick. They said Jim was a balding white male, slim, and about 6'2". Jennifer said Jim got possessive and controlling. They claimed Jim quit coming around except every once in a while. They had noticed after Jim was out of the picture, the ex-husband started hanging out at Jennifer's. Jennifer came over on Memorial Day, May 25th, 2009, to borrow a cooler. Her and the ex were going to the lake. Jennifer conveyed to them she had a problem with her ex, thinking they were getting back together. Jennifer told them she just wanted to go out with him, not necessarily get back with him. They said the ex-husband drove a black Dodge pickup. They recalled a story that Jennifer had told them. When the ex and her were still married, he came to her work and encouraged her physically to the parking lot and, to quote them, pretty much beat her up. I'd like to note this is the only time I have heard anyone mention that the ex was physically violent to Jennifer. The residents also recalled that the occupants of 103 Cumberland before Jennifer were involved in drugs. They said the police had raided the house. 111 Cumberland. I found no interviews. 112 Cumberland. An officer spoke to a juvenile whose father was not at home. No info. 113 Cumberland. I found no interviews. 114 Cumberland. I found no interviews. 115 Cumberland. Around Easter, he saw 2 vehicles tearing around the corner down the street. Persons got out of their vehicles and began arguing. He went inside his house. He couldn't remember what the argument was or what the vehicles were. Says he doesn't know the victim. 116 to 304 Cumberland. I could find no other interviews. The only other interviews I have are from the street behind Jennifer's house called Wilmington Avenue. 104 Wilmington Avenue. This house is directly behind Jennifer's house. This man lived at 104 Wilmington Avenue only 2 months at the time of the murder. Monday evening, the week of the murder, he said a younger guy was mowing the left side of Jennifer's house, but not the backyard. He had never seen him mow before, but had seen him lying on the trampoline in Jennifer's backyard. We believe it's Tuesday. The resident was grilling about 5 or 6 p.m., and Jennifer's blinds were all closed. He said it was the first time he had seen the blinds closed. 108 Wilmington Avenue. They said Apex Security have been going door to door trying to sell alarm service. The people residing here stayed up until 12 midnight the night of the murder. They heard vehicles but not gunshots. They heard what they thought was a car basing and heard what sounded like a loud truck. This tells me there was activity in the neighborhood in the late and early hours before the murder, and possibly somebody that didn't hear about the murder until later may have saw something but thought it wasn't important. This case needs that one witness to come forward and break it wide open. The neighbors did their best to remember the night Jennifer was murdered and what they saw at 103 Cumberland, but nobody thought she would be murdered. Nobody imagined that on a cool summer night in the early hours of June 17th, 2009, a kind and decent mother of 3 who had known no enemies would be assassinated. Even today, where most of the 2009 neighbors have moved away, Cumberland Road is a nice and quiet neighborhood. It is not a location where people fear of getting murdered in the middle of the night. It's a peaceful neighborhood where you raise your children and enjoy the community. If you have any information on the murder of Jennifer Kinder Smiles, please contact the Waxahachie Police Department. As far as I know, the lead detective is still Detective Elizabeth Glidwell, who can be contacted at 469-309-4435 and emailed at eglidewell@waxahachiepd.org. Also, you can submit an anonymous tip to Ellis County Crime Stoppers by calling the hotline at 972-937-7297, pays. Or use your mobile phone by downloading the app called P3 Tips. Make sure when you select your location that the program you select reads Ellis County Crime Stoppers. You can upload images and videos. You can also two-way dialogue with their call takers. Once you submit your tip, you can check the status of the tip by logging into the app. You can also submit a web tip at crimestoppersofEllisCounty.org. Click on the Submit a Tip button. Check the status of your tip by clicking on the tip follow-up button above and enter your tip ID and password. A unique computer-generated tip ID and password are provided to each tipster. Be sure to keep track of that for follow-up. All tipsters remain anonymous. They do not have caller ID. They do not record phone calls. They do not ask for your name. Computer IPs are not saved. Locations are not tracked. Please remember, as Detective Woodruff said, Jennifer was not originally from Waxahachie, so it seems her story has slipped away with time. Please help her rest in peace and come forward with any tip possible. Thank you. It's the beginning of the Roaring Twenties in Kansas City, Missouri. World War I had ended, and the soldiers were back in the city as working civilians. People are moving from farms to the booming metropolis. Kansas City would become the Paris of the plains. Its beautiful water fountains, made to quench the thirst of horses, would eventually function as beautiful art. In the city, the electric railway was the main mode of transportation. The automobile will eventually take it over. Of course, many people in the city use their feet for transportation. The victim in this next episode is an ardent walker and never steps on a Kansas City streetcar. Unfortunately, she will take an evening walk on January 31st, 1922, into the brutal end of her life.